Hello, everybody. We're just getting the meeting set up. You are now here on Zoom for the Beginner Witch series, week one, third iteration. It's so wild to think that this will be our third time going through this. We're so excited to have so many people interested. You guys help us live our purpose by wanting to see these videos and join the classes.
And it's 7:06, so we better get started.
Okay, if you guys see me,
promised you.
If you see me look weirdly over to this way, I'm admitting people or checking through stuff. So I'm not paying attention. I'm just also doing my duties.
So I'm going to let Jayme pay attention to that for a minute, and I'm just going to tell you what the goal of this course is. So this is 13 weeks, as you probably know. We're on week one, and the goal of these 13 weeks is to provide knowledge about witchcraft from our perspective.
That's really important, because it's not everybody's perspective. It's just us as practicing witches.
So yeah, we don't have a witch Bible to follow or anything like that, or some magic book from 400 years ago that we're teaching you from. We're actually teaching you from our own experience and our own perspective. And there's a lot of people out there who will have a different perspective than us, and that's okay. And that's okay for you to explore too.
Yes,
so
please do. Don't take anybody's one-sided opinion as truth or fact or what's right. Just explore all options.
So we're also going to give you a path again to follow and or modify to meet your spiritual needs, because this is witchcraft for us is about a spiritual journey.
Yes.
And then we also the goal of this course is to provide a safe place for you to ask questions. So there's no bad question, there's no wrong question, although I guess we would say we don't believe in things like rituals, sacrifice, and
probably hexing and cursing. Those are the two things that you're not going to find here.
Yeah, you won't find us talking about things like any kind of sacrificing or any kind of hexing,
and
cursing,
we mean that literally
to control other people. So those are two things we won't ever cover, because that's not
in our practice.
It's not part of our practice.
There are witches out there who do it and who are educated on it. And again, if that's something that you're into, explore it and find out what's right for you.
And just watch your local laws.
Watch your local laws.
Know your local laws. Don't get arrested for doing something crazy.
Well, and probably one thing that we skipped over slightly is a mini introduction. I mean, we've been doing this now 2 years.
Oh, that's true. A mini introduction for all of us who are new and never seen us before.
I'm Jayme. I've been a practicing solitary witch for about 25 years. I started when I was 17 years old after a death, and it pushed me into this path. I was in the Navy for a while. I traveled around. I've done a bunch of things. I've had like 500 lives here in this one life. And after COVID, I quit my job and said, I want to do what I really want to do, which was help new witches on their path. So here I am. And here all you guys are helping me live my purpose. I'm so excited about that.
And I'm Kat. I'm Jayme's mom, and I've always been interested in the occult. I'm a Scorpio, so by nature, I'm into the dark side of things. But I really started on the witch journey almost 4 years ago when I moved here and experienced what both of my daughters were doing with rituals and spells and just holidays and things like that. I was like, wow, I've learned a lot in the last 4 years. So, but I'm a newer witch, probably like many of you on here. So I bring that perspective. Jayme brings 25 plus years of experience, and I bring your newbie questions that you might be afraid to ask, but please don't.
Which is super helpful for me, because when I start to explain something and she lets me know, hey, you need to like back it up 5 steps. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. So that's been super helpful for me as well. Okay.
Lesson.
All
right. What's the difference between a book of shadows, a book of mirrors, and a grimoire?
Yes. And you may not have heard about the book of mirrors, but we'll go over it slightly. But I think the first one that I like to go over, because it's sort of the basis for the book of shadows, which is so in the limelight and so witchy and everything that people have done with it. It's amazing. But I want you guys to understand that that's a really new thing. And even as a grimoire, grimoires are really not that old per se. And where grimoire comes from is it's actually it was Italian books that were hard to read that the French people all called grimoires, because it was about grammar and writing in the like proper and correct languages. So when you hear the word, one thing I urge you to do when you hear words in witchcraft, look them up at etymology.com. This is the history of words. So you know where they come from and see if people's claim on them is legitimate. So that's one of the things that I explore a lot is we call these things by names, but we give them a lot of power based on what other people have said about them. So look it up for yourself. But the Grimoire is really just a book that is meant to be a handbook. It's your guidelines. It's the things that don't have significance to you. Like it's not a book of shadows, which is going to be more of the personal journey side.
Yeah, it's not a journal. It's like writings, collections of spells, rituals, incantations,
Your
correspondences, references. So it's a reference book. It's something that you might share with someone else if you had some interesting spell in there and you were going to meet witches and you're like, we're going to do this cool new, full moon spell or whatever.
Right. So it would be something that you're okay with showing other people who at least believe what you do. Like maybe not everybody, but at least believing what you do. So an example of that, I brought what you would call my book of shadows and my grimoire are the same book and they change every single year. So I don't keep a solid grimoire. I actually combine the two together, but I want to show you guys a page for me that in my grimoire, I have my year ahead tarot spread. So this is what mine looks like for one of my pages. And then on the other side, this is all of the new moons and full moons so that I can keep track of them. And I just know that that's in my pages. I don't have to go look it up on the internet somewhere. So when we talk about your correspondences or your references, whatever is important to you can go into your grimoire, the book that you use for your magical workings.
Oh, and here's the funnest thing about her stuff, because she's super creative. So like, check out her cover. So this is just like a kind of a plain notebook. Mine's a plain notebook, but she likes to doodle and all that kind of stuff, which I love.
Hey,
so this is where
stickers,
you can take your creative energies and experiment with it and just make it whatever you want. So
there's also no rules for these books. So if anybody tries to come across and say, here's the 8 things you have to have in your grimoire or your book of shadows, I want you guys to remember that this is all new within the last couple hundred years or even 100 years, especially for the witch world and the reemergence of Wicca back in the 20s. That there are no hard and fast rules unless you're following a specific path like Wicca or one of the other, I don't even know, denominations. I don't know what you would call them, but we're solitary witches. So we actually make our own rules and do our own thing. We take what we like from stuff. You could call it eclectic even, and we build our own practice. So we're not following anybody else's examples or rules. We make it our own. It's a good thing to know.
Yeah. So another thing to know about grimoire, despite what you see in the movies about some witch having a 400-year-old book that was passed down through, generation after generation, that's Hollywood because, first of all, reading and writing 400 years ago were not skills that everybody had. Paper was very expensive. These things, having something like that in your possession could have been dangerous, even fatal if you were caught with something like that. Only the wealthy had access to education. In fact, in the United States, education only became required for children in 1918. So if you see something, you're like, oh, somebody tells you, I have my grandmother's grimoire from the 1700s. Yeah,
probably not. But it could be a collection of thoughts and ideas that they trace back through their lineage or something. I'm not saying discount people, but staying up on historical facts and where we were culturally around the world is really good to understand that, okay, these things are not some ancient practice that you need to tap into. These are many, many lives that people have lived and experienced that just keeps rolling over into the next generation. And that's why we call ourselves modern witches rather than just witches or pagans of old, because we are trying to experience the practices modern in the modern world. So that adaptation is important for us because, again, there's things that happened a long time ago that I would not condone and don't want to be a part of. Choices for you to make. That's part of the witch's ethics that we'll get into in a couple weeks or next week. I don't know.
So again, tonight we're going to talk about 3 different types of books. And since we're still on grimoires, if you want to start a grimoire, which again, remember is more like a reference book.
It's a handbook.
It's a handbook.
What you learn and you want to remember.
One of the ways you can do it is get yourself a book, decorate it or not, or buy something really fancy if that's what you want to do. Make a page, label it, do a bit of research, and then write what you learn. For research, you find many places that say the same thing, or
that's
if
to make
feels
it credible. So like as you research stuff, don't always just trust one source. That's one person's opinion or one person's research. Definitely look into it in several places if you can. Choose bigger websites that have been around longer also. There's individual people who do this stuff, which I love and support, witches trying to educate witches. It's exactly what we do. But then there are places that have real researchers who bring stuff to light, pictures, images, old text that you can get more from. It's an accurate historical account rather than opinions.
And some of our favorites, I think, are like for anything to do with religion, if you're trying to connect this with or relate it to or understand it in the context of a religion, because I'm beginning to think of the witchcraft for me as my religion, although nature is really my religion, but still, if I was, in nature, my nature is my church, witchcraft is my religion. But I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, so history, or is it the religion of history?
Learnreligions.com.
Learn religion.
Great website. It talks about everything, all kinds of practices, old and new, anything. And they're not biased on anything. So they're not promoting any one thing, but they do all the metaphysical stuff, mind, body, heart, chakras, whatever you want to learn about. They have tons of articles and they get very specific. And then there's general ones too. So learnreligions.com is a great resource as a website.
Was there another one? Don't forget etymology. Etymology, when you come across words that you don't know, look up the meaning and the history,
the origin of the words,
the origin of the words,
so that you can understand why you're using it. I'm jumping way ahead, but even when you're writing your own spells, if you want to do that, as you look up words and what they can mean, like say you want to use the word happy, but maybe it doesn't rhyme or it doesn't feel significant enough, you can look up, all right, where did happy derive from? What are other words related to that? It'll give you all of that. Just another resource.
All right. So the last thing about Grimoire, you're going to mess up. You're going to like scribble something wrong, draw the wrong thing, put something in there. It's okay. We all do that. Don't be too hard on yourself. Use some whiteout or some washi tape or some stickers or just tear the page out. So
all of those things I do. I have a little whiteout tape marker with me because I start writing too fast and I'm like, what the hell is that word? I don't even know. White it out and start again. Like, slow down, be intentional with your cursive, because otherwise it turns to mush. It's like word accordions. That's what it looks like.
Okay. So that was a grimoire. The second book that we're going to talk about is your Book of Shadows. So you can think of this book as a one-on-one therapy with yourself.
Yes.
You're meant to spend time. This is another journal. The journal that Jayme has functions as both a reference book and her journal.
Yep.
But the point of the Book of Shadows is to delve into what's really going on in your life and the deep things that are happening into your life, and to spend time reflecting on those. And
the reflection part that's really important.
Trying to analyze your reactions to certain things, because if you're like us, and I hope everybody here is here for the same purpose, which is we're on a journey to grow and to become our higher selves, and to be happier in this world, and to understand our purpose in the world, and to know what this journey is about.
Yeah.
So to figure that out, and to really feel confident that we know why we're here, and we know the lessons that we're here to learn, and we know
the connectedness of it all.
And we also know that when we don't learn them, we're going to come back and learn them again. That's what we believe.
We do believe in multiple lives.
So, we've been here before. We're going to be here again with the goal of just reaching this really elevated spiritual level where one day we'll be out there, we'll be guides, and we won't have to come back, and
we will choose not to,
and live in this.
We'll help
in this. What do you call this?
Physical room, the classroom.
The classroom. The classroom.
So I will show you guys, because this is the same book, and the page you saw before was a reference book. But if any of you were here through January, you guys know that I had a pretty hard month. My son went to the hospital for 6 days, got diagnosed with epilepsy. He is doing well now. Thank you for asking, Teresa. So that was a huge upheaval in everything that I was doing. But as an example, you can't really read it, but this is my shadow page for that. This is me writing my feelings about it and just kind of getting to script with what I went through while watching my son in the hospital, on machines and just not doing well. And that's it. It's one page for an event that was very traumatic, but I got all the things out of it that I needed to because I'm just that far along in my practice right now. Had this been 6 or 7 years ago, it would probably be like an entire notebook dedicated to what I was going through while I was there, because I couldn't like go from a perch and look down over it and say, okay, this is a human experience. Like everything's going to be fine. We all die in the end anyway. So if this is what it comes down to, like we've already accepted that path of all life has to end to be recycled. Energy doesn't die. So having my beliefs with me during those times and then writing about it and going like, this just reaffirms the fact that when I encounter tough times, I know what I'm doing. And that's my shadow work for that. So considering being in the hospital with your child and then going, I might lose them. I might be part of the club that's, a childless mother type thing. And then saying, okay, if that happens, how do I go through that? How do I explain it? What am I going to do with that? It only took me 1 page. I'm pretty proud of myself for that, because I went through all the things with him and talked about it with him while we were there. So it didn't require as much writing on my part, but that's just an example of like, that's a shadow book of shadows page, I guess you could say, but that's my shadow self encountering, like, you're a parent and you often don't think about that your child might die before you. Like that's not the way it's supposed to go. But when confronted, how do we react to this? What can we make, what can become something else out of it? How do we bloom and blossom after that? Because life doesn't end, the world keeps turning and stuff. So an example, I hope you guys didn't mind me sharing that.
Well, and I have it. If I had my book here, which is over there on my other desk, so there's probably 4 pages from when I went to a wedding in December.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was meeting some family members that I'd never met before, and there was a lot. There was a lot going on there. So I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And one of the people there, my brother, I have a half brother, and it's his sister. So his sister and I are not related, but except through him. And that was just a whole trippy thing, which I had to sort of come to terms with and figure out how I was going to respond to her and what I was going to think about what happened there. So it was pretty long. It was about 4 pages that I wrote about that, just going like, she needs help. She has some shadow work to do herself. So,
well, I think that's probably an important point, that with shadow work, it's not like you write a page and the problem's done. It's usually over time, over a long time, figuring out what's going on. And shadow, I don't know if we've said it yet, but the shadow self is originated from psychology. So anytime you're doing psychology type work, whether you're in counseling, you're working through PTSD, abusive relationship, whatever it is, the stuff, the emotional, physical stuff that we hold in our bodies, that's all part of the shadow work.
In fact, the origins of shadow self is coined by Freud and Jung. And the shadow self is our unconscious and things that we do. Yeah. It's also called our emotional blind spot.
And it's the emotional blind spot. I'm sorry, because I didn't explain that very well, but your emotional blind spot is when you have an event that happens to you and it triggers a reaction, right? So this is just how you respond to things. Mine used to be, if I saw an animal hit on the side of the road, I would just get so pissed off and sad, and I'd cry and I'd be like, it's so unfair. They're innocent. Like it really affected me. So that was shadow work that I had to do and say, remember, Jayme, everything has to cross over. That energy is recycled. That's not the death of, the animal spirit itself. Like that's just a body part. Like we know this. I had to reiterate that to myself for a long time, because seeing animals hit on the side of the road just broke my heart. Like it emotionally affected me. That was an automatic response that I had for so long. And I thought it was healthy and good. I'm like, I care about animals. I love them. But letting that sadness sit with me and linger and not wanting to drive or just getting upset like too often about it, that's part of that automatic reactions that we have. One of the things I worked through, I guess. Sorry, I interrupted. Now, do we know where we're at?
That's okay. So the word shadow is used. The word shadow is used because it is the side of our personality that we live with every day, but hardly know that it's there. So shadow and occult really mean the same thing. Occult. Hard to know or shrouded in secrecy.
Yes. Have you guys seen the word occult? Because back when I started witchcraft, that was what it was really called, like the occult. And they would make it seem so dark and dirty and demonic and like evil spirits coming into your house and taking over your children's lives or whatever.
Ouija boards and exorcist. And
occult literally means shrouded in secrecy. Occult and the Latin language actually go back together, because when the Roman Empire died out, all right, small nerdy fact, you guys, the Roman empires who spoke Latin, right? It started in this really, really small village, and the bigger that the Roman Empire got, the more that Latin became an acceptable language. But then by about 600, 700 AD, okay, so many, many years ago, the Roman Empire died out, and people didn't want to speak this complicated freaking language anymore. They're like, can we get something easier? And this is where like the love languages came in, French and Spanish and Italian, because Italian and Latin are very closely related as far as the origins of them. So when we look at occult, that's what they actually used to say about the Latin language, that it was an occult language, meaning it was hard to understand, hard to read. And that's why the books that the French used to call the Latin Grimoires were Latin books that were very hard to understand. Boom, full circle. There it all is.
Okay,
It's really
so
getting into the history of it.
getting into, so going back to Book of Shadows. So how this came to witchcraft, Book of Shadows came to witchcraft was Gerald Gardner.
Mr. Gerald
And
Gardner.
if you don't know who that is, Google that. You'll find out he's the
Father of Wicca.
father of Wicca.
I think that's what they call him now.
Created the first Book of Shadows, introducing it in Wicca, and it was truly a grimoire. All of his religious practices, ceremonies, secrets, and hidden knowledge were contained in this book. This is why grimoire and Book of Shadows are often
That's why they're
interchangeable,
confused.
and people don't know the difference.
Yeah.
Modern witches have claimed the Book of Shadows as their spiritual journey, for their journey and reflections after doing spell work and rituals. It's the personal thoughts, feelings, and experiences of the witch.
So if you have to know the difference, like just very simply put, your grimoire is like a book you can keep on a shelf or buy from somebody else. I actually brought two books that you guys may have seen like on Amazon or in the bookstore if you're interested in grimoires and Book of Shadows. And the first one is called The Eclectic Witches Book of Shadows, but it's truly inside more of a grimoire where it's a reference book. What she does differently is she leaves all these blank pages so that you can write your thoughts and feelings in. So it's kind of a collection of both. It's a beautiful book. I actually have a video that I'm doing that compares the two. This one here, very nice book, lots of room to write in. If you're a beginner and you don't want to, if you want to start simple, that's a great book to start simple. The other one is, this is the Complete Grimoire, which is by the lady who created like hashtag Wiccan Tips or something like that. It's an Instagram account, I think, but she got published the book because she's been so successful at bringing new witches in and helping to educate them. My number one complaint about the book is it wasn't well published and the pages fall out. Ooh, I'm so sorry. But the rest of it is, it's packed full of information. It's truly a grimoire because it gives you systems and breakdowns, and it's just for reference. The other thing that she adds in there, which I thought was really cute, she's like, what I wish I knew before I started practicing. So that's two examples of books that are called different things but are technically the same. So you can see how that line gets really blurred for Book of Shadows and grimoire. I think when Kat and Jolene and I are all together and we just call ours, do you have your book? It's just the book. We don't specify, do you have your Book of Shadows? Do you have your grimoire? No, we just are like, do you have your book?
Yeah, it's basically this year's journal.
It's this year's recordings of everything,
Yeah.
you know, and so that's
Because
really how we treat it.
I think another thing that is important is writing things down, spending time with it, so that you can see how you progress on your journey. Because it really is helpful to have these like conversations in your head and put them down on paper and put your thoughts down on paper.
Ooh, okay.
It's a private though. This is not something you would share
For
with
Book
someone
of Shadows,
else.
it is private.
So I'm gonna go over how to start your Book of Shadows.
All right, I'm going to show another page only because it's super simple, you guys. It's nothing like my Pisces new moon ritual. So this would be something that would definitely go in your grimoire. But I wrote out what my ritual was going to be and then went out with the full moon and performed it. But this is all it looks like. It's just writing some green washi tape. There's not a whole lot to it, but it was my expectations of what I wanted with the new moon. And that's it. It's another page in my book that is not hugely different or super significant. It's like, it's a recording chronologically of what's going on in my life.
Okay, so to get started on your book of shadows or your journal or your
Yeah,
magical
call it
book,
what-
yes, by the way, Billy, thank you for that. You call yours a witch book or a magical book.
Yes.
You can call your witch book whatever you want to call it.
And you
don't have to,
should.
you don't have to call it anything if you don't want it. It's just a journal that you're going to start keeping to reflect on your journey. But a way to start in case you're kind of struggling with, what do you start with? How do you start this thing? You're brand new, you don't know. So here's a couple of things off the labels that you might find helpful. So recognize a pain point in your life.
What do we mean by pain point?
Um,
What's a pain point for you?
um,
I put her on the spot.
All right, well, hold on.
Okay.
Well, I had one recently. I had a employee that was a pain point in my life for about a year. It was like,
That's what
and
she
I
wanted
was
to do.
So, yeah. And so this person that I was the manager of was causing me a lot of just grief and anxiety. And I was really struggling with it because I wanted to be a good manager, but I was finding him very difficult to manage. So that was a pain point for me. And that shit lasted for about a year and that sucked. So, and I did write about that actually.
She had to work through
because
that.
I was so frustrated with it and with myself for being annoyed with him. I'm like, okay, try to understand this person. You guys, I did his numerology so I would understand like what his number was and try to understand more about him because he was really so different than anybody I'd ever managed before. So that's a pain point. A pain point in your house, in your life might be something that's going on with your husband or your mother. Maybe you have mother or daddy issues.
Or why you don't have free time. Why does it seem like things at your house are always falling apart? Or, why are you always picking?
It's discontent. I think it's like
relationships.
Discontent.
It's things that are not satisfying in your life, but then also usually repeat themselves. Like how many bad relationships have you had? How many times has a bad relationship resulted in the same kinds of things that happen in the relationship?
Outcomes,
not just outcomes, but like things in the relationship. Each guy, didn't make as much money as you. Each guy moved in with you and you didn't move in with them. Like there's all these things, like why is it the same every single time? And so when you start to recognize the patterns within your life, that is the best kind of shadow work, because then you can have these big aha moments. You're like, I fucking knew it. I knew something was wrong. And then you're like, never again. I've got to change. Like, I'm not about this drama anymore. It's going to get better. So and it takes a while because sometimes you want to deny it. If you're anything like me, I'm like, I'm the best person ever. I do everything right. That's my Virgo side coming through. Like I'm the perfectionist and I have to treat every situation like that. But it made me not have friends. So last year, I pick a word every year for what I'm working on. Last year was like community. I need more friends in my life. I'm always so uptight about things, or I get scared to get involved. Shadow work. Why do I not have
Honestly, I'll tell you something. As somebody who doesn't have kids, doesn't have a boyfriend, only has a few people, it's easier.
You have children, I'm right here.
Okay, I know.
But like at home, maybe.
I mean, I'm talking about like kids in my house, a husband, my family, whatever. But it's easier when there aren't people in your life. And so when you have to deal with people like your husband or your kids, this one's pretty good though.
Or your neighbors.
Or a coworker or somebody that you manage or a boss or something like that.
The people
it really challenges you. Like, and how do you become your higher self in dealing with people who annoy the hell out of you?
How do you show up?
Yeah. And so, because my thing is like kindness, spread kindness. I mean, I have to tell myself and to remind myself that. So I forgot what I was saying.
Daily.
Yeah, I've got to remind myself of that because, well, what I was going to say about you, something that you were saying about, I forgot now. Anyway, let's go back to starting your book of shadows. So recognize a pain point. Does it reoccur? Do you ever feel cursed? Like,
I had that one time. I thought I was cursed. I thought I destroyed men.
Do you wish you could be and feel different? When did this first occur? Who were you with? How did you deal with it or not deal with it?
There's lots of questions here.
So these are just some, and maybe we'll put this in the email follow-up.
Because
prompts.
You got to find the questions that really strike a like, oh God, if I answer that, that is going to lead to a lot of shit. And maybe I don't want to do that.
Once you
But that's
open
when you
that
need
door,
to.
once you open that door, like,
The
why do
shadow
I,
of
why do
Pandora's
I
box.
always pick men that are, okay, that are not on the same level as me? So they're
An equal
always,
partner?
they're always like not in the same place, in my mind anyway. They're not in the same place, like financially or security or job wise or what. I always see.
Why do you pick men that you have to take care of?
Why do I pick men that need, yeah, they're like baby birds and I take them home. Little baby birds that I take home and they're wounded and I need to fix their little wings and like take care of them. I always do that. Like, why? So there's like a whole lot to unpack there. If any of you are on here that have ever been in relationships like that or have a pattern of picking people who are needy and need you. So there's a lot to unpack there. So that's the kind of things we're talking about, like what's going on in your life, I guess, that's making you dissatisfied or unhappy or worse, depressed and, just like, fuck it.
It's taking your light. If you've been in a place where shit's gone wrong and you literally feel like your light is being stolen. And in my bad situations, that's what I felt like. I felt like I had to retreat into a hole to be safe so my light could not shine. And that's how I always approach my situations where.
Well, that's what I was going to say about you. Like you kept everyone, most people at arm's length for like, and just didn't connect with people because, it's like once you
drop people on, like, or what do you say, walk away from people at the drop of a dime or hat or whatever the saying
exactly.
is.
Like,
yeah. Well, that's also military life. I mean, that's why it was easy for me. I'd be at a place for 2 years and move on and be like, all right, see y'all. It was nice knowing you. I know we said we were best friends, but like.
So those are the things. And then of course, if anything big happens in your house, in your life, like somebody dies, somebody gets sick, or maybe you're dealing with an abusive parent or an absent parent, or
even when you're sick yourself,
those
even
are
going through that.
Those are the kind of things that you can like really spend some time writing about and trying to understand and unearth and get to the core issues so that you can start to change the pattern of behavior that you have always had for your whole life and probably reacted to this situation.
The automatic responses.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to move on to Book of Mirrors, which Book of Mirrors is a newer term. I probably only heard this in the last year or so.
Yeah.
And if you think of what a mirror is, it's a reflection. So you look in the mirror and you see your reflection. That's all that the Book of Mirrors is. Well, you wrote here that it's to document your spiritual awakening. But it's, these books don't have to be separate books. They can all be the same book. So don't feel overwhelmed that you got to have a Book of Shadows, a Grimoire, and a Book of Mirrors. You don't. It can all go into the same place. But the purpose of the Book of Mirrors behind that is to document your spiritual awakening, and it's a reflection of where you are in your journey. And it becomes a mirror which you can see yourself more clearly. And later on, you can reread your journal entries and try to see patterns and recognize patterns in your life. It's useful for, through self-reflection, we understand strengths and deficiencies, and we can edit out behaviors and patterns so that we can choose not to repeat those patterns. So this is all, if you guys are not seeing a theme here, we're not doing a very good job because the theme is
reflection and recognizing patterns.
Yeah, the theme is looking inside, because if you're unhappy in your life with something in your life right now, a lot of people will look like, well, my job makes me unhappy.
Well, it's outward.
Yeah,
right?
You're looking outward. The point of this and the point of this journey, I think, is to look inward. Like, what can I do to change how this situation is affecting me? We just
learn to love yourself. Teresa said, and learn to love yourself. Yes. That's one of my questions for myself. Do I love who I am? Am I honoring myself in a way? Do I allow other people to overshadow me? Like every once in a while I'll have a experience because, I've been on this path a long time. You'd think I'd have it all together, but damn it if I don't. the other day at the gym, some guy walked up and wanted to try to tell me how to do a chest press, but he said the word breast to me like 4 times. And it made me so uncomfortable. I'm like, dude, nobody asked you. Like, not a single person in this gym asked for your fucking opinion. Don't know why you felt the need to approach me. And yet, you know what I did? The whole outside thing, I was like, oh yeah, oh, okay. Oh, you think I should? Oh, okay. I was trying to be
And
so
she's
nice.
so mad at herself.
And I walked away from it going like,
She still thinks about that every
why
time
did
we're
I
at the
not
gym.
stand up for myself and be like, hey, didn't ask you, don't need it. Thank you so much. Please move on. And so I just, oh yeah. So now I'm like, okay, that only has to happen once and nobody will get away with that again. Because I tried to do the like nice, pleasant, happy people thing. And yet sometimes you don't know when that's not the situation to act happy, nice people. It's like, no, I needed to be more like witchy bitch, get away from me kind of person. And I did it. And I was like, damn it, I got to see those situations more clearly sometimes. And it was when, all right, so it was just for whatever reason, it was him saying the word, you got to put it here to your breast. You got to do this with your breast. And I'm like,
Well, okay, so, well,
say chest. What are you doing? I don't know.
well, we should probably back this up with a little bit of
What?
information.
Should we?
Yeah,
What do you
well, a
want to
little bit
blast
of,
me on?
oh, well, just a little
She's
bit
about
of
to blast me
history.
on
So
something.
when Jayme was in the Navy,
My-
they would, what did they call you?
Oh my God.
Jayme with the
no.
big blue eyes.
Yep. When I got described, I was Jayme with the big blue eyes, and they did like the like cartoon thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So she's,
Well endowed. Thank you. Yes.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
If you guys can't tell, I'm blushing like I'm right now. I can't believe she's bringing this up. Great to talk about.
Well,
this
so
online.
when somebody then,
This is
you
not
know,
going
if
in the
somebody was to
recording.
say something to me, like, you need to, you know, you need to make sure it goes down to your breast, I would just be like, what breasts? Because she didn't get that from me. She got that from the other side of the family, her and her sister both.
We're all
So
up
if
there
I
next
wouldn't
week.
be, so I wouldn't be as self-conscious about it, although I would probably be like, what, get the fuck out of my face, idiot. But
I
but
just needed
for-
a nice rebuttal to be
but-
like, didn't ask
But
you.
for
walk away.
her, you know, it's like, it's an area of sensitivity, which because her life since she's been
It's
a
a
young
pain
girl.
point. Oh,
It's a pain.
point. When you get known or made fun of for that, it's like, I didn't choose to be born as the letter P. Okay, I'm sorry, that's my shape. I have genetics. What am I supposed to do? So anyway, now everybody knows a lot about my boobies. That's fun.
The point is, well, and I was going to say something. So someone said, I think it was Teresa, you just said a minute ago that, you know, sometimes it's good to tell people off. Okay, for me, that is my natural inclination. When something happens, I automatically go to this super defensive and and flip out. Like,
she's ready to fight, y'all.
I'm ready to fight. I'm not going to fight, but you know, it's like the fight thing comes up inside of me and I
Okay.
just want to act crazy. And that's something I need to control, because that is not a good way to interact. It's not a good way to handle things. I mean, that's not who I want to be.
Well, but you can see the balance between the two, where I really pacified the situation and kind of like swallowed my voice, whereas she would probably flip out pretty bad and make a scene that it didn't have to be that way. There's a
Yeah.
balance, and that's what shadow work, reflection work is all about. I think that was the whole point of this
I think so.
conversation. I'm bringing up so many intimate details.
Well, and you know what? The great thing about being with you guys here in this little platform is that we can do that. So we can share this with you, because a
100%
lot of you
ourselves.
will connect
Yeah.
with some of our
And
stories,
understand it.
and or you'll have something similar in your own life. You're like, oh man, can I relate to that? You know,
So
so
you can
that's
laugh about it later when you see stuff and you're like, oh, I remember that one time on the meetup.
Another thing I'm super sensitive to or attuned to is people who are really nice people who are taken advantage of or treated poorly because they're very nice, and then people are just rude and stuff to them, and I'm like, that makes me so angry. We were talking with a friend yesterday, and she's dealing with a situation with somebody, and when she's telling the story, I start like the fire inside me starts up, and I'm like, I want to go hit the woman. This is how because she's such a nice person, and then she has this other person, and I think it's because she's really nice. This other person treats her really crappy, And I'm like, that's not right. She shouldn't be treated like that. She's super nice. And how dare you, whatever. Anyway, so
wait.
I'm on that.
You guys are
path.
about to watch me reverse engineer this shadow work. Ready? How come you don't stick up for yourself like that? Oh, that's for work later. You talked about my boobs. It's only fair that I bring up some other stuff. Just saying. Okay. Moving right along. I love
Okay.
you. I love you. I love you. I'm
And,
here for you.
and this is why we're here, because we're
Yes.
all trying to grow, right?
Yes.
Okay. So to wrap it up,
That's it.
Book of Shadows is for your personal thoughts, feelings, experience of a witch. Your grimoire is your magical reference,
Yes.
and your Book of Mirrors is the reflection of your experiences in your daily life. In modern terms, these are all journals of some kind that help you grow through experience, reflection, and practice of witchiness.
Yes.
So your homework this week is to get
Homework.
a journal,
Of some kind.
any kind, and start it. So it's early in the year. This is a great time to start a brand new. Go find a pretty book or
a plain one.
Yeah, a pretty one, a plain one. If you don't have privacy in your house, you might want to make it something plain that can sort of be, not anything that you would.
Amy's showing hers.
I love that.
Amy.
I love
Yes.
that.
I forgot to say this. Do you guys know what? When I was in the Navy, so technically like Wicca and witchcraft was not considered a religion. We couldn't put that on our dog tags, all that stuff. I had to put non-denominational. But in order to keep a journal, because we weren't even allowed to have certain kind of books, even like that's crazy. The journal that I kept as my grimoire Book of Shadows type thing was actually, I called it a dream journal. And so that's what it was labeled as. And I did write my dreams in it also, but it was everything else that went along with it. So it's very easy to pass by when somebody's like, what's this book? I'm like, oh, it's my dream journal. I just write down what I dream about. People now don't see that as witchy. They're like, oh, that seems kind of normal.
Nobody wants to read about your dreams. Trust me. They're like, that's just weird.
Dreams.
No one wants to read about your dreams. So they'll stay out of it.
They don't understand their own. They're like, how am I going to read about yours? I don't know what's going on in mine. Thank you so much for joining us for week 1 of the Beginner Witch series, where we talked about your Book of Shadows, your grimoire, and the Book of Mirror.
We'll be back next week.